My name is Susan Jolie. I am president of the Hummer Woods Civic Association, adjacent to the Annandale Revitalization District. I've submitted extensive written testimony for the record. Radical reductions in the minimum parking requirements will create numerous new problems while failing to secure the alleged public benefits. The proposed amendments are controversial because of the failure to perform relevant research. Parking utilization studies should have been performed to determine right-sized parking requirements for distinct Fairfax County communities. Under the proposed amendments, a developer would have the legal right to provide only one parking space per unit for multi-story residential buildings in Tier 2 revitalization districts. More than one vehicle-owning occupant will no doubt reside in many 1, 2, and 3-bedroom condos or apartments, but only one space would be provided regardless of the number of bedrooms. No additional parking would be available for visitors. The unrealistically low base rate represents a 35% reduction from current minimum parking requirements. Then there are numerous additional by right reductions, adjustments for mixed-use projects, and discretionary authority. These provisions could result in cumulative reductions of 50% or more. Regulations adopted now need to meet the immediate transportation needs of Fairfax County residents today, not in an imagined future in which public transit can significantly reduce reliance on private vehicles. Most of those commenting do not have the detailed knowledge of actual conditions in specific neighborhoods included in the planning districts or so-called tiers. Residents who do live in the impacted neighborhoods are in favor of revitalization, protecting the environment, and other goals articulated in staff presentations. But they understand why the proposed rates are unreasonable and that the benefits are not as advertised. Unreasonably large reductions in on-site parking will not make vehicles go away as imagined. Cars and trucks will overflow onto roadways in residential neighborhoods. This will have adverse impacts on the environment, impede traffic, increase congestion, threaten vehicular and pedestrian safety, obstruct access by emergency vehicles, and diminish walkability in areas that lack sidewalks. It is manifestly inequitable to transfer the cost of parking from developers to the residents or businesses in the community. The appendix to my written testimony contains photos of on-street parking and retail parking lots in Annandale today. On-site parking for low-rise residential buildings is clearly inadequate, disproving the notion that there is 35 to 50% excess parking capacity. A 2016 parking utilization study of several urban areas, including Annandale, likewise establishes that the proposed 1.04 per unit rate is not right-sized. When developers fail to provide sufficient parking spaces on their property, residents of that building, their visitors, or patrons of business tenants will simply find parking spaces in adjacent properties or on the street. The residents of adjacent buildings, handicapped persons, persons needing to use EV charging stations, or customers of the business who are displaced will be forced to find parking elsewhere. Business tenants will lose customers who will patronize other businesses that can provide convenient parking. The developer should rightfully bear the costs of providing and maintaining on-site parking, not the owners of the adjacent property and residents of nearby neighborhoods. Transferring these costs to residents who do not profit from the development is inequitable, inefficient, and negatively impacts competition. Minimum parking requirements were adopted to prevent these situations from arising. The staff response to concerns about overflow parking is to conduct an after-the-fact utilization study and then install parking meters and create residential parking permit zones. Both actions impose costs on residents. The utilization study should come before amending the MPR, not after, when there is no way to increase on-site parking. Effective enforcement is not a realistic prospect. There are only 12 traffic officers assigned for all of Fairfax County. None of the predictable adverse effects of insufficient on-site parking can be dismissed as an enforcement problem. It is a planning failure. Another unconvincing argument is that those living in buildings with inadequate on-site parking should use mass transit. The appropriate economic analysis asks whether a person or family considers the public transit options to be a close substitute for an automobile for all their transportation needs. As discussed in my written testimony, a planning district designation is not a proxy for an imagined transit hub. Bus service that does not offer total trip time and regional coverage comparable to private vehicles will not reduce the need for on-site parking. The vast majority of Annandale's present or future residents will continue to use cars and work vehicles. In neighboring jurisdiction, the rates for multi-story residential dwellings are much higher. In Arlington, the base rates are 1 space for an efficiency, 1.2 for a 1-bedroom, 2.25 for a 2 or 3 bedroom unit, plus 1 additional parking space for every 4 units. Reductions in neighboring jurisdictions are provided for buildings situated within a short walking distance to high-frequency, high-speed mass transit. For example, Alexandria requires a building to be within a half mile of a Metro Rail station, 1/4 mile to a bus rapid transit site, or 400 feet from 4 or more active bus lines. These transit proximate reductions are modest in size, clearly defined, and based on short walking distances to permanent high-quality transit that is available now, not in an imagined future. As explained in my written testimony, Annandale is not a transit hub, nor will it be in the foreseeable future. No surrounding jurisdiction has anything remotely comparable to the proposal for cumulative Tier 2 reductions based on planning districts. The authority of the LDS director to reduce parking by an additional 10 or 30% should be eliminated. The transit-related adjustment is open to interpretation, whereas other jurisdictions have adopted precise definitions. Second, there is a real danger of regulatory capture, which describes a situation in which regulators consciously or unconsciously favor the financial interests of the regulated entity rather than acting in the public interest. Third, a developer may provide inaccurate or incomplete information to support an application. Citizens who are the most knowledgeable about their neighborhoods can correct or supplement the record. Decisions that can have a profound effect on a community should be approved by elected officials. Transparency and accountability keep everyone honest and build public trust. Virtually all the statements in the July 12th staff report simply assume that parking capacity is excessive. The revitalization district overlay for Annandale currently allows for a 20% NPR reduction. So there already is ample authority to make site-specific adjustments to relieve developers of the costs of providing truly unnecessary on-site parking. The prudent course of action would be to recommend further study for base rate minimum parking rates for multi-story residential dwellings and related reductions and adjustments. The amendments pertaining to retail and commercial uses could be adopted in the interim while retaining the current zoning regulations for multi-story residential and mixed use. Deferral of the proposed multi-story residential NPR would provide the county's elected officials with hard data to evaluate the effects of reduced NPR for all other users. PR staff should work with civic leaders who are most knowledgeable about conditions in their communities. They are in the best position to help craft appropriate changes to produce right-sized on-site parking requirements for new and renovated projects. The staff's latest effort to explain their proposal is a 95-page document issued on July 12th of this year. 14 days is obviously an insufficient time to review and respond to what staff has produced. The Planning Commission should identify areas that require further study and urge the Board of Supervisors to postpone the announced procedural steps to allow adequate time for community feedback. The goal should be to get this right, not get it passed. Thank you.